How to make Monss Flute drum and bass in FL Studio. Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking you through how you can go about making one of the kind of most viral drum and bass tracks at the moment, it seems. A track called Flute by Monss, who's a great producer. If you've not heard him before, make sure you go and check him out, and especially obviously this track. But yeah, today I'm going to be showing you how I recreated this in FL Studio so you can learn some of the tricks that he might have used, or just how to make this kind of style and how you can implement that in your own productions. Alright, so the first part of the track I'll be talking through is the drums. Now, I feel like I've managed to get pretty close with this recreation, to be honest. One of the main characteristics, if you listen to the original track, is it's very short, snappy drums. Like, the kick's very short, it's not very thuddy, it's mainly the attack that you've got there, the initial transient, and then a little bit of decay. If we go through the kick here, I've just got this splice kick. I literally just turn the trim all the way up. So this is what it sounded like originally. Way different, but I turned the trim all the way up and the out all the way up, and that's just made it way shorter. And the main thing I was looking for is that clickiness to make sure it cuts through the mix. And then if we move on to the claps, so this is what this clap sounded like originally. And again, because it's such short, snappy samples in the original track, I've turned the out up 72% and the trim all the way up. And then it makes it nice and short. And then on the processing on this, we've got an EQ. Just taking out any unwanted low end. And then I've also used a transient shaper. So if you don't know what this does, basically a transient, if you hear a snappy sound, that initial, very initial hit is the transient. And the transient shaper, it will make the initial hit more pronounced. And then you've got this pump here, which I've turned up to 27%. So basically after that initial hit, it will make it a bit quieter. And then I've turned the sustain all the way down as well. And then if we move on to this second clap sample, this is mainly just to add a little bit of extra information to the first clap sample. The first one really is the main one. We've just got this underneath, and again, adjusted the out and the trim of this. And then for the first hat sample, I took this disco loop. And then in order to make it like this, originally it says here it was 106 BPM, but then I put in FL Studio that it's 212 BPM, so double, because it will stretch it to be slower rather than quicker, because when it's quicker it sounded way too fast. And then I cut it up just to be this simple, typical drum and bass, liquidy hat loop that we've got going on. And then we've also got a transient shaper here. And then we've also got this shaker loop, which is just another layer underneath, just to add some more interest to the drums. On this, I've just added some EQ to cut out the low end because we don't want that. And then when the drop hits in the original track, there's a crash sample. I took this crash, obviously cut it down, so I adjusted the out and the trim again to make it short, because this was actually quite long. And then I added some EQ, and then I added some delay, some stereo delay. I turned the time down, so originally it was on that dot, now it's down to there. Turn the pan all the way to either side, it doesn't really make much of a difference, and then put it on ping pong mode, and then I've just turned down the wet. Now next up, we'll move on to one of the main elements of the track, the flute. In this example, we're going to be using MIDI with a stock plugin in FL Studio called Flex. In the free section of here, if you don't have it downloaded, it will be in here, and it's a pack called Essential Winds. Now I've used the flute staccato here. This is the preset. Now, I can't remember exactly what all of these were on when you initially load up the preset, but narrow is set to 61% and squash is set to 18%. I also turned off any reverb or delay or the limiter on here because we're going to do that stuff afterwards. So the first effect that we've used here is OTT, a free plugin. You should go and download it. Everything is literally as it is when you load it up. It's on 34% on the depth though. The good friend Transient Shaper. So I was comparing the flute sample that I've got here to what Monss used in the original track, and there was way too much attack, I thought, on this sample. So Transient Shaper to the rescue, turn the attack all the way down. Then some EQ because there was some weird low-end blowing sound going on. And then we've got a reverb. And that really just helps bring in the atmosphere because, yeah, it's a very atmospheric track. And then we also have this filter, which is just used at the start here. So if you listen to the original track, the flute is kind of filtered in as the pattern starts. And then you may have noticed I also have these extra plucks. So again, this is in flex under Essential Winds, and I use clarinet staccato. All of these are just down all the way. Then I believe the reverb and limiter are how I found them. We've got some EQ to clean up the low end. We've got this reverb going on that's got quite a long decay and is all the way up on the wet at 100%. And where there's a break in the Reese and in the flute pattern, you don't want the track to get boring. So there's just these reverby pluck sounds, and yeah, played super high. Then, if we move on, we've got this Reese bass. Now, this is made inside of Serum. A very simple preset. So, we've both got these on basic shapes, and we've turned the wavetable position up till we get this shape. And then we've set this fine tune on oscillator A to minus 35 cents and plus 35 cents on oscillator B. And then on here, filter on A and B, and it's set to MG low 24. And we've got it on key tracking mode. So this means the higher up the note we play is, the more the filter will open up. So a high note up there, you can see it opens up quite a bit, but a lower note is lower down. And then the cutoff is set to 134, resonance at 30, a little bit of drive on 6, that's probably doing nothing to be fair, and then the fat is on 24. And then in the effects section, I've got tube distortion, turn up to 27% just to add a bit of distortion. Then a multi-band compressor, but we've turned the high all the way down. So if you didn't know, you can drag these bands. And then the rest of them are just on default. And added a bit of gain, about 10 decibels. It's quite a lot to be fair. But I guess it was kind of quiet before. And then a filter. I believe these are almost all stock settings. This is on 17, and that's on 7. But this is just left in the middle on 330. The only effect I'm actually using here is a limiter that's sidechaining the kick and the Reese. So if we take a look at this. Just wanna stay in your memory. Last but not least, we've got a vocal sample. Now, obviously, it's not the same one Monss used, but this is just a similar style of vocal, I thought, or at least I made it become that by stretching it and adding a bunch of reverb. That is one of the key things here. So this is the original sample, but then I pitched it up 4 semitones, and then obviously time stretched it as well because it was 150 BPM, but we're at 175. And then without any effects, it sounds like this. Just wanna stay in your memory. The effects I used, so first of all, we've got this plugin called BX Solo. Now, if you heard there, it was really wide and I didn't really want that straight off the bat. So I soloed one side because sometimes if you got these really wide samples and you just put them into mono, it can sound a bit phasey. So if you solo one side, it can be a better solution, I've found. Just wanna stay in your memory. And then we've got an OTT, a little bit of gain at 1.9 dB and depth at 37%. Just wanna stay in your memory. And then an EQ to cut out any unwanted low end, and some reverb just to give it that big atmosphere you hear in the original track. Obviously the decay, you want it quite long for this kind of thing because that gives you that atmospheric sound. The wetness isn't up too much, but it's enough. Just wanna stay in your memory. And you can hear that long delay that will go throughout quite a bit of the main loop playing. And then if you followed along or you're just making something similar, this is the kind of thing you should end up with. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you found this useful, please subscribe because I'm going to be putting out more drum and bass tutorials. It's kind of the thing I'm gravitating more towards now, because I really enjoy producing it. And yeah, it's just the main thing I'm looking to do now. So make sure you subscribe, press like if it's been useful. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.